The following program contains the opinions of the host, guests, and call-in participants. These do not necessarily represent the views of this show's distributors or sponsors. This program may contain obscene, profane, or otherwise objectionable language. Viewer discretion is advised. Howdy ho, everybody. Coming to you cordless from glamorous Minneapolis. It's Thursday night, July 9th, 2026. I'm Jim Peters, and welcome to another edition of Jim Peters at Night. This is episode number 367, if you're keeping score at home. Paul Blake Smith is our guest tonight. He's been on this program previously. He has written 4 excellent, absolutely excellent books on the UFO phenomenon. He has a brand new one out right now, and he joins us. Was it southwestern Missouri, did you say, Paul?
That's correct. That is correct. I'm doing fine, and thanks for having me on the show today.
Oh, it's a pleasure and an honor. When you were on last time, which I didn't realize was 3 months ago. I actually had to look. Time flies when you're having fun, Paul. But I thought maybe it was like a month ago, but it's been 3 months. So
I just linger in your mind that way, I guess.
Yeah, you live rent free in my head. That's right.
That's right. Hopefully positively and not negatively.
Oh yeah. Well, no, absolutely positively, because and I went on and on about this before. I'm astonished by how well researched your books are. I mean, it's just, and this one is also no exception. But you have to explain here. This is basically a rewrite of your first UFO book, correct?
That's correct. It's revised. I've corrected a few things, a few mistakes that I made 10 years ago. And I've got some new information to share and a better presentation and a better publisher. And it's based right out of your hometown, Minneapolis. So I'm sure they're thrilled that I'm here in the first full day that it's available.
Yeah. And we appreciate you coming on here first time too. But here's the real amazing thing. The last time you were on, we talked about this somewhat briefly. You're actually from Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and you said last time, did I get this right, that you didn't actually know about this growing up? Is that correct?
That's correct. I spent my first 35 years in Cape Girardeau, and I had not heard it. However, my stepmom went to high school in the 1960s in Cape Girardeau, and she said, I heard this story way back then, before it blew up in the late 90s and became a national thing around the year 2000, which is when I first heard it on Art Bell's radio show, Coast to Coast, and with Linda Moulton Howe, and found out a number of UFO investigators had been to my hometown. So it grew more and more fascinating, and I kept waiting for years. Where is there a book on this? And when there was none, I decided, I'm a writer. I guess I'll write it myself. And I'm a little embarrassed the first time out. I made some mistakes. I had the wrong date for the crash, and I want to own up to that and amend that, say, oops, sorry. And I now pinpoint it as like late April 1941.
Let's put your book cover on the screen here, because we have to basically start here. The people probably don't know what we're talking about. The book's called The Bombshell, the UFO Bombshell Before Roswell, Missouri's 1941 Crash and Cover-Up. So can you explain to people here just the basics? And also, I didn't quite get this. Basically, I read about 2/3 of your book, as I told you. You're not, and no one's really absolutely certain on the date. Am I correct on that?
That's right. I think I could pin it down, but I wouldn't put money on it exactly as to probably Thursday night, April 24th, 1941. And the morning after, FDR held a press conference in the Oval Office and started talking about hemispheric defense. It suddenly became very important. And while I was reading an article or two on FDR's news conference subject, they were a bit puzzled as to why he kept bringing this up. And in light of a alien crash that he was probably informed of that night, He couldn't come out and say, this specifically, but he wanted people to be, on the aware and vigilant and such.
Yeah. So most of these stories since then, especially since the 1990s, have been filtered through a reverend in Cape Girardeau named William Huffman. Do you want to explain to the public exactly the basics of the event and maybe through his eyes too, since you considered him the primary witness?
Right. He's the basic witness. I did have a woman contact me on Twitter, and I wanted more, but she said my great aunt was on a farm near Cape Girardeau, and this thing went overhead, and it was emitting sparks, and it was kind of lit up and flying low, almost like it was sputtering to a halt, and came down close to her grandmother's farm. And I thought, oh boy, this is exciting. And then she clammed up on me. But the main eyewitness is Reverend William G. Huffman, and he was a real pastor. I was in his home, and they showed me the real estate deeds that he signed long ago. He first was a renter in the early 40s when he came to Cape Girardeau from Jonesboro, Arkansas. He was mostly a fundraiser at first, and then after the event, he was promoted to a full-time pastor at the Red Star Baptist Tabernacle in town, a church that was since blown away by a tornado in 1949. So Reverend Huffman died in 1959. So you learn that nothing lasts forever.
Of course.
Everything in this case is long gone. It was super tough to research. But as you point out, I try to put as much research and references and data into my books to make sure my readers get their money's worth. Well,
I have to commend you too, because when you speculate, you market a speculation, and I would say most of your speculation is reasonable. I mean, you're not going off on any sort of wild goose chase with any of the facts or anything like that. Let's also point out to the viewers too, Cape Girardeau is about an hour south of St. Louis. Is that correct?
Oh, maybe 2 hours, depending upon how fast you drive. My brother can handle it in about 90 minutes, but
all right, 2 hours, right?
Him. Yeah.
And this is the other thing I didn't quite get from the book. Do you know where the exact location of the crash site is?
Probably the precise, no. The very general area, yes. I've been given so many clues, and it all points to this cropland near the Cape Girardeau airport, which ironically needed funding in 1940. And Harry Truman, Missouri's senator and Grand Master Freemason, came to Cape Girardeau, was probably driven right through that area 5 months before the crash, of all people. And he later became the most powerful, famous man on the face of the earth as U.S. president. He was the Grand Master Mason of Missouri, a hardcore Freemason, 32nd degree in 1941, and that's an organization of good-hearted men who kept certain secrets. And so I think that's another reason why the case was so effectively muzzled at the time. Reverend Huffman said he was to this crash site expecting an airplane crash about 12 or 13 miles from where he lived in downtown Cape Girardeau, a city of about 20,000 people back then, double that now. And he was taken out there by a police associate, and they were expecting a cylindrical airplane cracked open with human beings in various states of despair. And he was imported to offer spiritual comfort, which was pretty much a big thing in Cape Girardeau. It was quite the Christian community with lots of churches.
Well, that was
so it made sense.
That's kind of America in 1941 anyway, isn't it? Right. Places they would send out a pastor, you know.
Yeah, at Easter time, I checked the local papers, had almost like a box score of the attendance at church and for various baptismal events going on around town. So that's how seriously it was taken. So you really would call a pastor. And it turns out in my research, I found out that the Cape Girardeau Justice of the Peace lived right across the street from Reverend Huffman, and he was associated with the police department. So we can't say absolutely for certain it was the Justice of the Peace. I think his name was Milton Cobb. But it would make total sense for him to want to take his pastor that he was friends with, his neighbor, and say, you want to go with me to a plane crash? This could be serious. But when they got there, there was a silver round disc cracked open, no airplane at all, and no human beings on the ground. Someone had pulled out these 3 gray alien bodies of 4 foot tall at most. They were stretched out on the ground. It was probably a little tough to judge how tall they would have been. But at one point, 2 local men picked one up and propped him up under the arms and posed for a photo. And it was a news photographer who had a big speed graphic camera he was taking pictures with normally as a news journalist. But for this, he pulled out a small box camera and took one little hobby camera photo and walked away, which seems incredibly foolish because you've got the biggest story of the millennium and you took just one picture and walked away.